Mr. Cuomo, I have never had to resign in disgrace. I have never cut Medicaid. I have never stolen hundreds of millions of dollars from the MTA. I have never hounded the 13 women who credibly accused me of sexual harassment. I have never sued for their gynecological records, and I have never done those things because I am not you, Mr. Cuomo. And furthermore, the name is Mamdani, M-A-M-D-A-N-I. You should learn how to say it because we got to get it right.
Yeah, not only is that all true, it's barely scratching the surface. Buckle up because there's a lot of ground to cover. I'm gonna have to go through this rapid fire because there's genuinely so much to cover. I'm not even gonna be able to touch all of it. A quick shout out to the New York Times for being completely feckless today. By the way, their biggest issue with Mamdani is that he doesn't have enough experience. I guess they prefer another geriatric dino in charge. That tracks. But here's the thing, whether or not Mamdani is your guy, Cuomo should be no one's. And by the way, when I say dino, I mean dino. Cuomo shouldn't be in this primary at all. Not just because he's a credibly accused serial harasser who had to resign in disgrace, not just because of all the corruption scandals, which I'll get to, but because when he was governor, he literally worked to give Republicans more power than Democrats in the legislature. He's not a Dem, he just runs as one. He helped create a coalition between Republicans in the state assembly and a handful of independent, moderate Dems, dinos, Dems in name only, to basically work together to pass the Republican agenda instead of the Dem agenda while Dems were in the majority. You could then also blame them for any failed policies that he ran on. Moving on. Yes, he was accused by multiple women of harassment and SA. An investigation including 179 witnesses found that at least 11 of the women's allegations were credible. Yes, this is why he resigned in disgrace. That alone should disqualify him. And yes, he sued for gyno records. You can read the report for yourself, and if you're on the fence at all, I highly suggest you do. Corruption. Cuomo is one of, if not the shadiest governor we've had in New York, and that's saying something. Perhaps the best way of illustrating this is with the Moreland Commission, which, by the way, also reveals a lot of his MO, which is creating a problem that he's then running on solving. Basically, he created a commission to investigate corruption and then shut it down a few months later because it started looking at the firms that he used with his campaigns. But that shouldn't surprise anyone because a lot of his corruption is quite public. Many of his donors have received multi-million-dollar government contracts or had their family members hired for taxpayer-funded jobs that they were grossly unqualified for. And of course, who could forget the Buffalo billion corruption scandal, which is still somewhat playing out. While Cuomo himself has not been directly implicated, just about everyone else right around him has been. Similarly, it involved giving large government subsidies and contracts to friendly companies, you know, thanks to bribery and bid rigging, like Tesla. By the way, we taxpayers have paid around $60 million in legal fees to bail Cuomo out. Now I know what you're gonna say, that's back when he was governor. Now he's no one. I'm sure he's changed. Don't worry, he's still as corrupt as ever. Most recently, his campaign was denied campaign matching funds because it was found to be highly likely that he had been coordinating with his super PAC. You know, the super PAC that is funded by billionaires, many of whom also supported Trump. The super PAC that was recently accused of having edited an image of Mamdani with his beard edited to look longer and darker, so he looked like a scary, scary man. But don't worry, I'm sure he won't miss the hundreds of thousands of dollars in matching funds. He's got millions coming in from his billionaire butts. By the way, let's talk about some of the pros that he's running on. He wants to fix the MTA, which he broke, because Mamdani was right. He has systematically taken hundreds of millions of dollars from the MTA year after year after year to help pay for tax cuts to his wealthy Republican friends. Oh, he also used some of that money to pay for ski resorts upstate. And don't forget that when Andy Byford, the guy who was actually going to fix the MTA, was making progress, he had to step down because Cuomo was so difficult to work with and seemingly just wanted him to fail. He really hates the city, but we know that. That's why he hasn't lived here in decades, and he's also nowhere to be found now. I'm not kidding. His whole tactic this primary has been to skirt by on name recognition and hiding. No one can seem to find the guy or get a hold of him except under very specific and heavily controlled circumstances. But I'm sure he lives in New York City in whatever place he recently signed a lease on. I'm sure he just never, ever, ever leaves his apartment, and that's why no one has spotted him. That's it. And how lucky for us to have a mayoral candidate who never leaves the house. After all, it's not like there's anything going on. Apropos of nothing, I myself ran into Mamdani at a protest months ago, and he's been spotted at multiple things doing the actual work on the ground. But again, this isn't about Mamdani. Mamdani, who may not be your guy. This is about Cuomo, who should be no one's guy. By the way, nothing he says can be trusted. Everything that he's running on having achieved is a lie. He's taking credit for other people's work. For example, he was against raising the minimum wage for years and only came around to it when it became a national issue and he was eyeing a presidential run. Same with marriage equality. Other people did all of the work fighting for it, and at the very last minute, he jumped in to take the credit when it became politically expedient for him to do so. But I'm not done with his corruption. What about the book he was paid over $5 million to write and that was caught having his aides writing on taxpayer-funded time? That's right, our money paid for the work that went into getting him $5 million for a book he didn't even write about himself. How much of a hero he was during the pandemic. Remember that? Yeah, see, that whole narrative was false. And he was actually helping to unalive people's Grammys and Grampies in droves. He directed nursing homes to take in COVID patients and limited their ability to test them to see if they were contagious, literally locking them in with our most high-risk population. Then he fudged the numbers, not counting anyone at a nursing home who got sick, who was then sent to a hospital and passed away there, thus lowering the number of nursing home losses that were counted. Then he lied about it and lied about lying about it. When a report was being prepared with numbers that made him look bad, he had those numbers edited. And then when the edits were discovered, he lied and said he had no idea about them. Emails showed that he, in fact, was the source of said edits. He also delayed the establishment of a vax site because he didn't like de Blasio or New York City. He wanted the credit for it. He also delayed early mitigation efforts that de Blasio tried to implement in the city and then proposed them himself to take all the credit. By the way, those millions of dollars in Medicaid that he cut, yeah, they were cut mid-pandemic as well and largely affected city hospitals. He does not like us. Then again, there are a few people he does care about other than his donors and family. Like, he allegedly got his family members priority at-home private testing, paid for by us, of course. And don't forget that he named the rebuilt Tappan Zee Bridge after his daddy. Oh, that's right, because Andrew Cuomo is a Nepo baby. Governor Mario Cuomo Bridge, or Cuomo Bridge for short. But why wouldn't he help his family? Remember when his brother Chris Cuomo was fired from CNN because it was discovered that he was helping his brother navigate the publicity and press around the allegations against him? Or maybe it was the allegation against Chris himself. But I guess that's a better relationship than when he allegedly threatened to ruin a New York Times reporter's career. Remember when he and fellow state officials knowingly let a whole town drink poisoned water for a year before it was discovered? And then when it was discovered, they blamed the EPA for making things too confusing. And then it turned out that the EPA had been warning them the whole time, and the whole time they were just debating whether or not to tell the townspeople. Hoosick Falls remembers. But hey, I guess it's lucky that we figured that one out at all, considering a couple years earlier they'd been caught auto-deleting emails, which conveniently and illegally erases paper trails and avoids records requests. He claims he wants to lower the retirement age and boost pensions for government workers. Yeah, he's the guy who raised the age in the first place and raided those pensions. Now, weirdly, a couple of unions have in fact endorsed him, but if you speak to actual union members, you'll learn one basic thing. Union membership is largely opposed to him, but union leadership is afraid of what he'll do if they don't endorse him, because he is a vengeful, spiteful man. And I suspect that that is also what happened with the New York Times today. I know I'm missing a lot, but in these times where we need someone who will stand up to Trump, don't elect another Trump. And I mean that literally. Not only is he funded by the same people that Trump was funded by, this is what he said just a couple months ago when asked how he would deal with Trump.
I dealt with him as governor, remember, so there was a lot of back and forth. He's another one from Queens,
Yes,
right?
he is. Yes, he is.
Three of us Queens boys. It is his hometown. I think that he wants New York City to appreciate him. I think he thinks there's an opportunity for him to do good things in New York City. And really, we have to see what he does.
You heard the guy. They're both Queens guys, and they'll talk it out. One thing's for sure, they're both Queens boys that haven't lived in the city in like 50 years. But if that's not enough, how about this?
On sand and ice in New York, they are going to do things that are illegal and unconstitutional. But let's not overreact.
You heard the guy. Don't overreact. This is not a guy who cares about us. This is not a guy who cares about New York City. He is trying to use us as a stepping stone to become president one day. He will not fight for us because he never has. And he says as much, by the way. He believes that raising income taxes on people making more than $1 million a year by 2% is equal to socialism and anti-democratic. He sees it as part of a chaotic future where public services are free for people like you and me. Sign me the hell up. And if you agree with him and that's your idea of hell, fine, but what about everything else? Including the fact that his bagel order is a bacon cheese and egg on an English muffin. What the fuck is that? Please, for the love of all that is holy, don't rank Cuomo.